What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Daily Betslip for Monday, May the 2nd. Ben Heisler, Peter Dewey alongside. Shout out to Joanne Stoner, our producer and director for today's stream. What's up, Pete? Good to see you. Happy start of the Stanley Cup playoffs to you. How's it going?
Doing good, Ben. We got some great NBA basketball yesterday. I know we talked about it on Bet and Breakfast. We probably got two games. Couldn't really ask for much better games. Then we got two more tonight. Heat Sixers probably won't be as good with Joel Embiid out, but super excited for that. NHL playoffs. Got the Kentucky Derby this week. Just a unbelievable week in sports, honestly.
Yeah, we're rolling into May, absolutely on fire. I know that your NBA picks have been outstanding as well. We will dive into some of those over the course of today's show. By the way, I did mention the Stanley Cup playoffs. You and I fairly limited in our Stanley Cup knowledge, but had a fun show today with our NHL insider Ian McMillan, as well as Donovan Smoot. Little veteran versus rookie betting action for the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. If you are watching today's Daily Bet Slip on YouTube, highly recommend you go and check that out. Get your series predictions and best bets for the first round. That's available on YouTube. And by the way, if you are watching us on our streaming channel at BetSided on Twitter, you can always subscribe and weigh in on the conversation here by just going to YouTube and searching BetSided. You'll find us right there. We'll be able to dive right into anything you want, whether it be some of your best bets of the night. We'll talk about our game of the night in the NBA coming up a little bit later on in the show. It is, of course, the Phoenix Suns and the Dallas Mavericks. The Suns are 6-point favorites with a total of 214.5. If you want to weigh in on that game as well, that's up right here on YouTube as well as on Twitter at BetSided. Let us know where you're going in this one, Peter. And I have a feeling normally the favorites have been the heavy bets so far in the early going for the Daily Bet Slip. I have a slight suspicion that it may not be the case tonight. We might see a little bit of underdog action with Luka coming back and looking fairly dominant in his return.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping we are because I have a small lean, but
don't give anything away.
But no, I think that series, and we'll get into it more, is going to be really fun. Hopefully Devin Booker's healthy. I've been saying this all playoffs. Like, can these stars just get healthy? Like, I feel so bad every time I see somebody go down with an injury. Like, Marcus Smart got banged up yesterday, and all I was thinking, I was like, if Marcus Smart dislocated his shoulder and he's out for the series, like, it's just going to make the series worse. Like, can we just get all of the good players on the floor and have them play? Like, I saw somebody on Twitter, I believe it was Chris Herring, actually, and he friend of the program, and he tweeted, can we just turn the injury slider to off for the NBA playoffs? And I was like, yes, please, can we do that? Because that's how you get the best basketball. So fingers crossed everybody stays healthy in that series.
I say this in a half joking manner, but maybe the Bucks don't want Chris Middleton back. They've looked really good without their star small forward in the 3 games that he has missed. The Bucks have won, excuse me, 4 games that they've missed. The Bucks have won every single game. I believe they have covered in all 4 of those games as well, including as an underdog on the road against Boston last night. But where we start today's show, Peter, is with our daily bad beat of the night, and it happened right in the association. And for anybody that was watching Bet and Breakfast and hanging out with us on Sunday morning, and by the way, Bet and Breakfast, you can catch us every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. East Coast time, and of course, the Daily Bet Slip Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So every single day of the week, BetSided has some live shows for you to go over some of your favorite bets of the night. We have to talk about this because you gave out as one of your favorite plays on Sunday, Golden State Warriors money line. And I think I poo-pooed the idea. I obviously tailed you because you've been on fire. But I thought to myself, it's 2.5. What could go wrong? Like, it'll probably be a close game. Warriors will make some free throws down the stretch, and then they'll probably win by 3, 4, maybe 5 points. 2.5 felt like that was an okay number in the grand scheme of things. And of course, Draymond gets ejected. They miss some free throws down the stretch. Warriors still win the game on the money line. So our bet covers, but not if you had the Warriors minus 2.5. Brutal bad beat to start the week for anybody on Golden State side.
Yeah, this one, you read the game perfectly, Ben, because if they did make a couple free throws at the end, they would have won by 3. But Klay Thompson, career 85% free throw shooter, goes to the line with less than 10 seconds left, and he misses not 1, but 2 free throws with the game at 117-116. So just, the odds of that happening, of Klay Thompson, of all people, missing both free throws is crazy. And then just the way that game ended up ending, they get the rebound, the ball got knocked out of bounds. could have been off the Grizzlies. Instead, they decide to jump it up at half court. The Grizzlies win the tip, and then the Warriors get the stop. Like, you had like multiple chances where the Warriors could have gotten back to the line. It just didn't happen. So terrible beat if you were on the Warriors yesterday, unless you took them on the money line.
Right. And again, for anybody that is expecting that to be the case moving forward, we thought that it wasn't going to be much of a series from Memphis aside. Showed a lot of fight. And again, like, they're at home, so they need to make sure they get game 2. But then again, if game 1 was the opportunity that they had, especially with Draymond getting ejected, starts to wonder whether or not they could be finding themselves in an 0-2 lead come game 2 for that series. And of course, we'll end up talking about it a little bit later on once not Bet and Breakfast, but the Daily Betslip moves along heading into that series. So yeah, just brutal bad beat for anybody that had Warriors minus 2.5 tickets. Certainly pour one out for you over the course of today's show. Let's dive into best bets for the night. And you and I have some MLB plays, got some NBA plays as well. Let's start with Major League Baseball as we work our way into it. I'm going to start with a player prop. You know how dominant Pablo Lopez has been? And by the way, some of you might be asking yourself, well, who is Pablo Lopez? I will tell you. Pablo Lopez is the starting pitcher tonight for the Miami Marlins. The Marlins are one of the hotter teams in baseball, and Pablo Lopez right now is one of the hotter pitchers in all of baseball. And I saw this from Joe Summers, who put out an outstanding play over in today's MLB Best Props article over at BetSided. He likes the over on the strikeouts at 5.5 at minus 130, and I'm going to tail him here. He hasn't given up a single run in his last 3 starts, goes up against an Arizona offense that we were talking about it before the show. We thought this Arizona team, Peter, was going to be able to hit this year. Maybe their pitching would struggle. Turns out it's been the complete opposite for Arizona. Right now, they've only scored 73 runs total on the season. Just for perspective, everybody in the NL West has at least 102 runs scored. The team with the 4th fewest runs in the division scored, the LA Dodgers, and they have a run differential of plus 47. Their expected win-loss record is 16-5. Arizona is in a completely different stratosphere, and the fact that they've only given up 92 runs but are 10-13 on the year just goes to show, man, if they just had any sort of offense, they'd start to get going. I don't think they're going to be the team that all of a sudden figures out Pablo Lopez in a pitcher's park at home. So I like the over on the strikeouts tonight.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think last week I took a strikeout prop against Arizona just because they strike out a ton. I believe they're bottom 10 in the league in strikeouts per game. So if Lopez is rolling like that, that's a reasonable number. Like, sometimes you start seeing when guys are pitching really well, you see they start creeping up towards like 7.5, and you're like, 8 strikeouts. That's a lot. He might get it, but it's a lot. But 5.5, definitely a much more reasonable number to take. So I love that play.
All right, so that's one in the National League. And unfortunately, for those of you that are Arizona Diamondbacks fans, if you've been watching the show, it might have seemed like we've thrown a few bits of shade in the direction of your team this year. My response would be play better. And then we'll stop betting against you guys. Just throwing it out there, Diamondbacks. Like, you have the ability. You're only 10-13. You can work yourself right back in the mix. You just got to start hitting the baseball a little bit. Just don't think today's going to be the day. Peter, you and I are both on a very interesting showdown in the American League East. I'm going to have you start things off here with your pick. And then I'm going to follow you up because you got the Yankees and the Blue Jays up north over at the Rogers Center. First place in the division on the line as we move into the month of May. Give me your overall perspective on this game and where you're headed for one of your best bets of the night.
Yeah, this is 2 of the best teams in the American League, and big news for the Yankees today. John Heyman, MLB Insider, tweeted the Yankees all were vaccinated, were able to get over the border. There was questions about whether Aaron Judge was actually vaccinated because he refused to answer the question before the season. Turns out he is. So good news for the Yankees. They won't be without their best player in this series, and huge because they play the Blue Jays so many times this year. You can't afford to be without guys when you go north of the border. So I'm taking the Yankees on the money line in this game at minus 120. They've won 9 straight. And I wrote this in my MLB power rankings today. You can check that out at fansided.com/betsided. The Yankees might be the best team in baseball right now. And I know that sounds like a homer attitude because I'm a Yankees fan, but like, you look at their statistics, they're 3rd in OPS. They're 2nd in team ERA. They have a run differential of plus 41. Only the Dodgers are better so far this season. the Yankees are doing it all right now. They've had an easy schedule, but they've taken care of business so far. They're facing a Blue Jays team. They're pitching Ross Stripling today, who's arguably their weakest starter. I know Jose Barrios hasn't looked good for them to start this year, but if you're going to attack anyone on this Blue Jays team, bet against them, it's probably Stripling. So Yankees have Jordan Montgomery going. Ben, you mentioned this on Bet and Breakfast, I believe, yesterday. Blue Jays are not as good against left-handed pitching. Vlad Guerrero's splits are actually better against righties, against lefties. There's a couple other guys in the lineup like that as well. So Montgomery does walk a lot of guys, but he also strikes out a lot of guys. I think that benefits him tonight in Rogers Center. And the Yankees, they're red hot. They were down 4-1 against the Royals yesterday, came back to win 6-4. I'm just going to keep riding them until the wheels fall off at this point. I mean, they're just playing fantastic baseball. So hard not to back them at this small price on the money line.
Yeah, certainly in fairness to the Yankees, especially, you have to give them credit. Thought it was going to be a bit of a challenging start against Daniel Lynch on Sunday, but they ended up being just fine. Ended up closing out against the Royals bullpen on Sunday as they started to fall apart. So they're coming in awfully hotter than New York Yankees right now. They've won 9 straight games. Toronto, it's crazy to think you go 7-3 in your last 10, and all of a sudden you're now a game and a half back in your division. Yeah. But that's the way that the Yankees have been playing right now. And it certainly worked out. I think it's going to be a fascinating series. And I'm on this game as well, but I like the under at 8.5. Now, first glance, you would think with the Yankees and the Blue Jays, you mentioned Ross Stripling, not necessarily at the top of the Blue Jays rotation. But both of these pitchers have been fairly serviceable this year, and both of them have done a really good job of not necessarily striking out a lot of batters. Stripling only has 12 strikeouts through his first 4 starts. Jordan Montgomery, as you mentioned before, the lefty for New York, only has 15. And I know that both of these teams do strike out quite a bit, but what I think has been really interesting is that these guys have induced a lot of soft contact, not a lot of barrels hit against these guys. Ross Stripling's only given up a 21.7 hard hit percentage. If you look at MLB StatCast, Jordan Montgomery, slightly worse, only 28.8% have been hard hit. These guys are pitching to contact, and they're not giving up a lot of home runs. They're not giving up a lot of extra base hits in the process. They'll give up some hits, and guys will get on base, but they've done a really nice job of limiting damage. And so 8.5, it doesn't feel like a particularly high number. You would think both of these offenses tend to be so explosive. You're going into the Rogers Center that tends to play more so towards batters, especially with a slight bit of juice moving towards the under. I think Vegas is trying to give you an indication that that's going to be the direction of tonight's game. It feels like the under is in play, and especially if both of these starters can go 5+ innings, maybe you look at a first 5 under in this game as well. But I mean, you've been watching the Yankees all year. Do you have any concerns about them maybe starting off a little bit slow, perhaps from an offensive side, going up against somebody that they've seen before in Stripling, but with the way that he's pitching so far this year, they just haven't been able to get a bunch of barrels on the ball?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I think the other thing you have to think about for the under is the Yankees have one of the best bullpens in baseball too. So Toronto, not as much, but like you said, if both of these starters kind of keep this to a low scoring first couple innings, like they're going to go to the bullpen. This might be the type of game where you got to win, 3-2, 3-1 type of game. Like the Yankees will go to, 6 different guys over 5 innings to get through this get through this lineup, but that's why they're second in the baseball in ERA. The whole team is pitching well. So I like an underplay here, especially considering I believe New York is they played the Royals, they played the Orioles, like some real bad teams. So you might get a little bit of regression in the offense today for sure.
Yeah. The other game that I like tonight, and we'll dive into some of your favorite NBA plays, but I'll give you one more on the Major League Baseball side. Nice NL East battle between the just crushing New York Mets as they go up again tonight at home, coming off the Sunday night game against the Atlanta Braves. Braves have been struggling a little bit, haven't really gotten their offense going. They've scored just 89 runs on the season, but their pitching has been decent. And I think, especially in a projected very low-scoring game tonight, you have Max Fried on the bump against Chris Bassett. So already, the under is in play, even with a low total of 7 runs. But I'm backing Fried. He's had success against the Mets over the course of his career. Braves got a little bit more rest. I know that they're traveling to New York But the Mets played on Sunday night last night. A lot of times players hate that following game, especially if it's the next day from that Sunday night affair. And I think especially with the Mets, even though they've done a good job of scoring consistently, they're not hitting a lot of home runs. They've only hit 18 on the course of the season. That's in the bottom 11 of Major League Baseball right now. And the other thing about Chris Bassett is that he's been one of the pitchers that's been complaining about the consistency of the baseball. And anytime that, listen, he's done a nice job for them. But he's also given up a hard hit rate of about 37% this year, has been a bit lucky with his fielder independent pitching. I know that the Braves offense hasn't taken advantage, but I do like them on the money line because I think Bassett's numbers aren't necessarily reflective of what he has been this year. And conversely, Max Fried on the mound as a slight favorite. At one point, they were underdogs in this game, but the line has started to move in the direction of Atlanta. I think right now it's a reasonable price point on the board over at WinBet. So I do think Atlanta on the road at one of the hotter teams in baseball against the Mets, Braves minus 107 on the money line feels like a good underdog pick tonight.
Yeah, not a bad underdog at all. Get a little bit of value on the Braves. Kind of wild. The Braves win the World Series, and we're getting value on them already this early in the season. Sometimes you just got to take it. They're going to turn it around at some point. This team's too talented not to be a playoff team. I think, again, like I bet in our preseason picks, I bet them to win the World Series again. So I hope they turn it around for sure.
I remember writing an article for BetSided at the MLB trade deadline saying like the Braves, I think at one point were 40 or 45 to 1 to win the World Series. There were a couple games under 500. And I thought, yeah, Ronald Acuna Jr. is out for the rest of the year. But like there's still plenty of thump in their lineup. The pitching staff's still really good. Like they can still make a run. And I saw it. I was like, I should just put like $20 on this. 45 to 1. Didn't do it. They, of course, won the World Series. So, Braves fans, I am happy to have helped your team out, get over the hump. I didn't mush your team, and everybody's better off except for me because of it. So, maybe this is the year that I jump on board with Atlanta, especially after another slow start. But let's transition over into the NBA for two of your best bets of the night. He obviously gave us the Yankees money line. I went with Pablo Lopez over 5.5 strikeouts. The under in Yankees and Blue Jays, and the Braves on the money line. But give me a couple winners in the NBA tonight. Who do you like?
Yeah, let's look to the early game first. We'll look at the Heat Sixers. I'm going to take Jimmy Butler over 36.5 PRA. If Reed is watching, it's PRA, not PRA. That's how we say it. Love Jimmy Butler on this number. And you look at what Jimmy Butler's done this season without Kyle Lowry, especially in the playoffs. In the last game without Lowry, he had 36, 10, and 4. Then in this playoffs, he's averaging 30.5 points, 7.8 rebounds, 5.3 assists per game. Has cleared this number in the last 3 games he played in. I know he missed game 5 of the Hawks series. Kind of feels more like Miami was like, we know we have this series in the bag. Let's not push Jimmy at all. Let's make sure he's ready for the second round. The big thing I think with this prop for Butler is I think the assists is the key here. Like 36.5 on the surface for a guy who doesn't really like look to score necessarily first is really high. But if Lowry's out, Jimmy Butler's going to facilitate the offense a lot more. Their only other real true point guard on the team is Gabe Vincent. Like they're probably going to mix in Victor Oladipo. They'll definitely play a lot of Tyler Hero on the ball. But this is going to be Jimmy Butler's team, especially if this ends up being a close game. He's going to be facilitating everything down the stretch. He's also upped his 3-point shots in the playoffs, and he's making over 30% of them. So I think that the scoring aspect of Jimmy Butler, like he's averaging 30.5. I don't know if he gets to 30, but if he gets you 25 points, he does so much of everything else that I think 36.5 is a really low number. And it might have dropped because he missed game 5. But I think you're getting a little bit of value here. Even at minus 115, it's not too bad of a price to pay on this prop.
So any concern? I know that you might be getting the discount, but is there still any concern that Butler, having missed the game before, even with the rest coming into the series, just may not be? Because I'm with you. I think the points for me is actually where I'm most concerned, because I think the rebounds and the assists will be there, especially if he's not 100%. Normally, guys will look to be a little bit more of a facilitator, but the injury concern is just not there for you tonight.
No, Jimmy Butler's missed a ton of games this year, and like, if it was a serious injury, I don't think he plays game 1 in this series without Embiid playing for the Sixers. Like the Heat were so confident they could win game 5 without him and Kyle Lowry in the series. They're up 3-1. They're just like, we're not going to play Jimmy Butler because we're confident in the rest of the guys. They're confident in their depth. They are probably the deepest team left in the playoffs other than maybe the Warriors. So, like, I think he's good to go. Jimmy Butler is a gamer, so if he's going to play, you're getting his like 100% effort. I don't think there's ever been a question in his entire career of like, is Jimmy Butler going to give you his all? So I think getting Jimmy Butler at this number, he's going to be on the floor. It's a revenge game kind of against the Sixers. I think he puts up a big performance. He's been great in this playoffs. Been one of the guys I think didn't get enough credit for how well he played in the first round because they just kind of rolled the Hawks. So that's the way I'm looking at this one.
All right, so Jimmy Butler over 36.5 PRA, points, rebounds, and assists, whatever name you want to call it. It's available over at -115 over at WinBet. That's game one. Do you have a play for game two between the Suns and the Dallas Mavericks?
Yes, sir. I got 3 plays in that game, saving 2 for our game of the week segment, but I'll give you out a quick one. Chris Paul to record a double-double. It's -125. And CP3, I mean, I know the NFL draft was on Thursday. I watched a little bit of the draft. I watched Chris Paul put on a masterclass performance in Game 6 against the New Orleans Pelicans. He shot 14 for 14, and the Suns end up winning the game. I mean, he just carried them. Devin Booker did not look himself, like didn't really score the ball well in the first half. He ended up with 13. He scored 11 in the second half. But I mean, this was just a vintage Chris Paul performance. Like he turned back the clock where it was like, yeah, he's the best player on the floor, and it's not particularly close. So I love CP3 to get a double-double in this game. If you look at his recent games, over his last 8, he's had double-digits assists in 7 of them. The only one he didn't have was in the last game when he was being asked to carry the offense. He finished with 8. And on top of that, he's double-doubled in 5 of those last 8 games. A couple of them, he missed his points, but one of them that he missed his points was the game Devin Booker had 31 in the first half. So I think Devin Booker being on a minutes restriction tonight, you're going to see enough Chris Paul where he has to score 10 points for them to be in this game. And then he's just like the facilitator extraordinaire. And I think one thing to look at today, and I don't mind people who are thinking DeAndre in points tonight, they're going up against a Mavs team that really doesn't have a key shot blocking presence on the inside. I think this could be a big DeAndre Ayton game. Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleber are not going to give him a lot inside. If they run a lot of high pick and roll like they did when Booker was out, I think Chris Paul is just going to be peppering DeAndre Ayton for layups. And then obviously Booker being back in the lineup is just more opportunities for assists. So CP3, the thing I noticed, his assist prop is juiced to -150 for him to get 10 assists today, but double-double's down at -125. I'm pretty sure he's going to get 10 points in this game. So I like that as a better value than taking his assists.
I think that's a great way to approach it. By the way, if you're curious as to how Chris Paul has done against the Dallas Mavericks in 3 games this year, because you're thinking, well, Dallas has been one of the better defensive rated teams over the NBA over the course of the season. Has been an issue for Chris Paul. In 3 games against him, he's averaging 15 points, 13 assists, and 4.7 rebounds. So even just purely from the double-double standpoint, it's right up there with that average. Now, granted, in his first game of the year, he only had 7 points in 37 minutes. But you're also more likely to trust the points to come, especially knowing if he has to take over in the fourth quarter. But double-digit assists in all 3 of those games, I think that's a really, really sharp way to approach that prop when it comes to the NBA. So those are the NBA picks from Peter. As he mentioned, Chris Paul to record a double-double, only -125. And then the over on Jimmy Butler, points, rebounds, and assists. Before we get to our game of the night, as we fully dissect the Suns and the Mavericks over at WinBet, again, the Suns are a 6-point favorite, total 214.5. Should mention, by the way, that we'll go and pick your community pick for the game. You can still find that poll up on our Twitter page, twitter.com/BetSided. And Peter and I are hoping that you'll lean in a certain way because we're in agreement. But the rules of the show, if 90% of our audience is on the over and we're going with the under, we're still going. We're rolling with you guys to make sure that play goes through. But I do want to talk to you about something that I found pretty fascinating because we've had basically a month of the Major League Baseball season to be able to just dissect some of the numbers from the betting aspect. And we've seen favorites, especially on the money line, Peter, get off to a pretty solid start in the month of April. So starting with the money line, and I want to give credit to Sean Zerillo over at Bet Labs, over at Action Network for posting this, because I think the numbers are really interesting. So if you're $100 better, this is what he evaluated it. If you were to have bet $100 on every Major League Baseball game throughout the month of April, if you would have taken favorites in every game on the money line, right now they're hitting at 62.8%. So your return on investment is just under 4, meaning you would have made about $1,239. That's interesting considering that, yeah, money line favorites, you expect them to win more often, but so many times too, part of the reason that people like to get on the run line when it comes to favorites is that as long as they win by more than one run, you're getting a substantial discount and far better odds. But even with the odds stacked against you, Peter, it sounds like favorites so far in the month of April have done a nice job. Dogs, if you would have bet on underdogs, even with the better odds, you'd be down $4,271. So a substantial loss in the early month of the season. You surprised that favorites this early on have gotten off to a good start?
I would normally say yes, because I think normally at the beginning of the MLB season, you're kind of seeing who's going to be the really good teams this year. But you look at it, some of the teams that we expected to be good from the jump have been good. The Dodgers have been good. The Yankees have been good. The Blue Jays have been good. The Brewers, the Padres, the Giants, like all these teams that, won their divisions last year and made the playoffs, they've all come out and they started hot. So when you see that happening, it's like those are the teams that a lot of people you're going to bet the most probably on the money. Like, this team's going to win tonight. And so the fact that that's happened, you've gotten less upsets from like an unexpected source, I think, at that point. So then if everybody else is kind of playing like 500 on the money line, when the favorites are winning at such a high clip, it's going to boost that number. So it normally is surprising at the beginning of MLB season, but the way this has kind of started, I see why it's hit at such a high rate.
One aspect that I found to be fascinating, because we've actually had similar results on the run line as well. Favorites have hit 48.6% of the time. Again, these numbers from Sean Zarrillo over at Bet Labs. They've hit just under 50% of the time. So your return on investment, if you were betting $100 on every game, would be $1,123. Underdogs, slightly better numbers on the run line. You'd be down only $3,000 compared to a little over $4,000. But the thing that I find fascinating, it almost feels like it just makes too much sense, is unders. Unders have crushed in the early going so far. Now, it can be a wide variety of things. It can be cold weather, and the bookmaker's not really adjusting to that. It could be the humidor with the baseballs, home runs being at its lowest level in several years. But if you were to have taken $100 for every Major League Baseball game and bet it on the under this year, that would have hit just under 60% of the time. So your return on investment would have been 13.4%. That's really sizable. If you would have been taking overs, your losses this year would have been on a $100 bet for every game, just under $7,000. Now, here's the real question for you. When the summer months start to come in and balls start flying out a little bit more and you start to see a little bit more carry, do you think we'll start to see more of a shift towards overs? Or at the same time, do we expect the sports books to start raising those totals just a tad bit more?
I think they're going to start raising the totals a little bit, but I also am intrigued because we know Major League Baseball changes the baseball every year, it feels like at this point. Yeah. So if home runs are at the lowest rate this year, if that keeps up, if we get through May into June and we're still seeing lowest rate, unders just might be the play for the entire season, because we've seen some of the higher rates in terms of home run rates over the last few years. And it seems like something has changed. And again, we don't know exactly what they do to the baseball, but there's been plenty of stories about how they've changed stuff up with it. So, I mean, you can expect there's going to be more offense as the summer goes along. And obviously, as some of these hitters get in their grooves, I think it's a little bit easier for some pitchers to start fast than it is hitters. You get into a 1 month slump, and that doesn't define your whole season. So I would say unders, though, I think just are for me personally, I think is the safer thing. I like backing starting pitchers that I can trust and either take a first 5 under or an under, just because it's easier than backing a lineup. You get so many curveballs thrown your way. It's very hard to handicap a lineup against a pitcher, against a bullpen, when you can just be hey, I know this pitcher's pitching well. He matches up good against this team because they strike out a lot. They hit a lot of ground balls, whatever it is. and say, hey, I'm going to take the under because of that. That is my strategy, but obviously it could change if the ball starts flying out of the park. We all might have to adjust, but it's wild that it's almost hit at 60% so far.
As far as teams that have had the most amount of success against the spread and also in over-unders this year, Ian McMillan has wrote about it over at BetSided that the LA Dodgers in every single win this year have won on the run line. There have been a couple close calls. They had a 4-run lead against the Tigers. They had a 3-run lead against the Tigers a little bit earlier on. Couple 2-run wins and 3-run wins along the way, but 14-7 on the run line this year. They've been a very profitable team to bet on when it comes to the run line this year. The worst team in baseball over on the run line this year, the Cincinnati Reds. You're getting a bunch of value sometimes to get them on the run line. You might even get them at plus value, which is very weird to happen for an underdog. They are 6-16, and it doesn't look like things are going to be getting better for the Reds anytime soon. Meanwhile, for over-under,
Cody Wells, who says fade the Reds every single day. He's always messaging us. Gotta fade him. He's right. They stink.
Yeah, shout out to Cody for that perspective, and he's been spot on there. Interestingly enough, do you want to know who the number one team has been in overs this year? Do you have any ideas?
I don't. I'm trying to think who scored. I feel like it might be the Nationals because they just give up a ton of runs. That might be.
You're on the right track. It is not Washington. Washington is 10-12-2 overs this year. It's the aforementioned Cincinnati Reds for that very reason. They are 12-9-1 in overs this year because their bullpen has not been able to sustain leads. They've given up plenty of late opportunities. So a bit surprising to see Cincinnati, considering that they've had struggles on both offense and defense this year. But if you're looking for an over and you're looking to bet a favorite, maybe that's a nice little two-way parlay to go against the Reds and to take the over. And we'll continue to share a lot of these different insights over the course of the year over at BetSided. But again, possibility for some regression down the road with unders this year. It's not going to be 60% throughout the course of the season, but definitely an interesting note as Major League Baseball has gone on now into the month of May. All right, we'll switch back out to the NBA to hit our game of the night.
Game of the night, baby.
Phoenix Suns and the Dallas Mavericks. And it just feels like a couple weeks ago where all of us were getting together for our favorite bets and our favorite futures for the NBA postseason. And I brought up, again, I don't like to toot my own horn, but every once in a while, once in a blue moon, I feel like I got something right. And I just threw out casually to you guys, hey, are we missing out on the Dallas Mavericks at 20-1 to win the West? Remember that the Utah Jazz, Pete, were 10-1. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, even though we all like Dallas to move on to that series, and we also agreed that if Dallas plays to their strength, this is before Luka was really dealing with anything major. We didn't know what his timeline would be. We knew he'd be back, just not sure when. But Dallas, all of a sudden, they're still sizable underdogs in this series. But let's just start with sort of an outlook and then go into the game of the night. Is there anybody that doesn't believe for a second that Dallas has a chance to knock off Phoenix in the series?
Yeah, I would hope. I mean, Dallas 100% has a chance to beat Phoenix. If anything, the Suns showed us in the first round that there is nobody that is untouchable in these playoffs because they looked like the untouchable team during the regular season, and they looked very beatable against the Pelicans, who are a far inferior team to this Dallas team that's been top 7 in defense for basically the entire season. Has a top 5 player in Luka Doncic. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. And is playing some of its best basketball, honestly, right now. Like the Dallas Mavericks in that Jazz series, Jalen Brunson's playing his best basketball of the year. Dorian Finney-Smith's playing his best basketball of the year. Maxi Kleber's hitting shots. Like this Dallas team is dangerous. And credit to you for saying, they have some value even when Luka was out, because I don't think a lot of people thought it was going to be like them. I mean, the books didn't think it was. They were underdogs against the Jazz the second Luka was ruled out for the first couple of games, and they handled that series fairly easily. I mean, they won in 6 games, and they didn't have Luka for the first 3. So, I mean, that's about as easy as you can get without your best player. And now they're facing the Suns team that I've said this before. Devin Booker is the engine for this team. Chris Paul has been fantastic, and I know I sung his praises earlier in the show, but they need Devin Booker. The reason they played so many close games is because Devin Booker wasn't in the lineup. And so he was on a 24-minute restriction in game 6 against the Pelicans. I'd assume it's probably similar. Maybe he gets up to 30 tonight, but there's no way he's 100%. He had a hamstring injury earlier in the year, re-aggravated it in the playoffs. Like, if he doesn't play, close to his level of, 25, 26 points a game, there's definitely a chance Dallas can win this series because they play at the slowest pace in the NBA, and they will slow it down and say, we're going to bet that Luka's going to get more buckets than anybody else on your team. And a lot of the times this year, that turned out to be the right move. So I think this is going to be a very good series. I'm extremely excited for game 1 because I think we're going to kind of see a preview of how the whole rest of the series is going to play out tonight.
I'm with you too. I'm curious as to whether or not Dallas has something sort of up their sleeve because they lost all 3 games in the regular season to Phoenix. They weren't blowouts though. Like they were all like not single possession games, but 3 points here, 8 points there. If you want to take Dallas right now on the money line to win this series, they're plus 230 over at WinBet to win the series. Phoenix is minus 290. And if they steal game 1 tonight, that number is going to drop substantially to maybe plus 140, plus 150. I mean, we saw it for Milwaukee and Boston. That series completely changed from the series price with Milwaukee in complete control after game 1, and they still don't have Chris Middleton. That's still up in the air. But as far as the game tonight, again, I mentioned the odds. I'll bring it up one more time just for anybody that might just be joining us. It's our game of the night. The Dallas Mavericks taking on the Phoenix Suns, game 1 of the Western Conference semifinals. Suns are -6 over at WinBet Sportsbook at -108. If you want to take Dallas on the money line tonight, they are 2-1 plus 200. Phoenix on the money line is -250 with an over-under of 214.5. Let's start in an area where we both agree. This is an area especially where you can get an extra half point at WinBet compared to most sports books.
Yep.
You got to go ahead and take Dallas here. I know that Phoenix has found a way to win in all 3 games this year, but I just don't know, especially with Booker on the limited minutes, especially with the type of defense that Dallas has played throughout the course of the series. These 2 teams are going to slow down pace. And because of that, because of the slugfest nature of this series is going to be incredibly physical, I'll trust the healthier team. And right now, the healthier team is Dallas. I don't know if they win on the money line. I don't know if I'm that confident, but I do expect it to be a close game heading into the final minutes. And 6 points is a lot to cover in that time, especially if it's going to be close.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. I have Dallas plus 5.5 as well.
Why take him at plus 5.5? Let's take him at plus 6.
Yeah, I know.
You have the extra half point over at WinBet.
You're right. And the thing that I looked at in this game, like Phoenix had the game 5 win against New Orleans where they won by 15. But other than that, they never really like pulled away from the Pelicans in any of those games. Like they were up big in game 1 and then New Orleans kind of cut it close towards the end of the game. But going back to the betting trends, and I don't love basing everything off of betting trends because you know me, I watch a ton of basketball. So a lot of what I'm basing some of these picks off is like you have to watch these teams play, see how they play in close games, how they play, don't play, how they play with the lead, all that good stuff. But the big thing that I saw is Dallas 14-10 as a road dog this year. Phoenix is 21-22 as a home favorite against the spread. So the Suns haven't been like they've been dominant in terms of winning games, but they haven't been dominant in terms of covering at home as a favorite. So Dallas did a great job against Utah. Every one of those games was close. Even when they didn't cover in game 1, they lost by 6 points, and that was without Luka. Now they have Luka. They're going to be able to play their style of basketball. And I can't get past the fact that like the Mavs are playing their best basketball of the year. What they did in that series, like they have a bunch of guys who are playing really well between Finney-Smith and Brunson. And then you look at the Suns, and yeah, DeAndre Ayton's playing well. Chris Paul's playing well. Devin Booker's off injury. Jay Crowder's been horrible. Can't make a 3-pointer. Cam Johnson hasn't really turned it around. Mikal Bridges had one really good game, and the rest he's been like fine. So yeah, there's like the Suns deserve to be favored, but I think this is a perfect spot to back the Mavs. I think this is going to be a close game. Like it's playoff basketball. I don't think we're going to see any blowouts, in game 1 of this series.
I don't think so either. Although what's interesting as we get to 2 of our other favorite bets from tonight's game, close game, physical battle, normally that would lead most people to lean towards an under for a prop, right? Like there's just not going to be as many scoring chances. There's not going to be a lot of transition buckets. But there are 2 overs that you and I both are targeting tonight that we just feel is really good value, even though the game script may not dictate it. So go ahead and kick things off with yours, and then I'll follow up with mine. We're both looking at players on the Mavericks side for tonight's game.
Yeah, I'm going back to one of my favorite props in these playoffs is Jalen Brunson over 19.5 points. I've been taking his points. I've been taking his PRA, but we're going to his points today. It's minus 125. And I'm just shocked this line is this low. I know we talked about like it's going to get slow. The game's going to slow down a little bit because that's how Dallas plays. But Jalen Brunson in 6 playoff games so far this year, 24, 41, 31, 23, 24, and 24 points. Those last 3 games were with Luka Doncic back in the lineup. And something I've talked about with my player prop strategy and what I've been doing in these playoffs and why I think it's been so successful is you have to look at volume for these guys. Jalen Brunson has taken 17 shots or more in every single playoff game. That's insane volume. Like if he's going to push 20 shots, I would hope he's going to push 20 points. That's just like a good shooter who is taking high percentage looks can also get to the line. That's just the way it's going to go. So when you're taking any kind of over, you want a guy who's going to have the opportunity to do it. Brunson and Luka are the guys who have the ball in their hands almost exclusively in this Mavs offense. So I love Brunson down at 19.5. I believe he was up all the way to like 22.5 in game 6 against the Jazz. So we're getting a little bit of a discount against a better Suns defense. But at the same time, somebody's got to score. So I'm going to go to the guy who's been scoring all playoffs and take him on the over here.
Yeah, he has not been afraid to shoot, and I don't blame him. He's going to get a nice fat contract from somewhere heading into the offseason as Jalen Brunson. So the over 19.5 on the board from you as your best bet of the night for the game of the night. And I'm going to stick with the Dallas Mavericks and go with another player that just is getting a ton of minutes in this series. The only game that he didn't play more than 31 minutes because he played in 45 minutes. And again, the only reason he only played 30 minutes was in the blowout win, the 102-77 win back in game 5 at home against Utah. And that's Reggie Bullock. Going back to the points, rebounds, and assists, the PRA, the PRA, whatever you're going to call it. And I still blame Reed for making us have to say this every time just because it's now a running bit here on the show. But his PRA only set at 15.5. It's slightly juiced over at WinBet. It's minus 141, but that's actually a bit of a discount even at most sports books, only having to go over 15.5 compared to over 16.5, which is more of the consensus line. He's playing excellent defense. Like we've mentioned, he's playing 40 plus minutes a game and it really hasn't slowed him down. I know that the points can be a little bit hit or miss, but here's how I kind of handicap this out. He's averaging 7 rebounds. He's averaging just under, 2.5, 3 assists per game. So that gets you to basically 10 on those alone. If he scores 7 points, like you're looking at a fairly safe number to be able to break past the 15.5. And Bullock is more than capable of it just because of the amount of time that he's on the floor. He'll be able to get opportunities to go to the free throw line.
Shoots
he's
a ton of threes too.
Shooting a ton of threes. Yeah, like in fact, if you look at his shooting from the last 2 games against Utah, every single one of his shots has been 3-pointers. Went 3 of 9 in game 5, went 2 of 6 in game 2. So he is taking open threes and they are encouraging him to do so. Now, last couple games has not gotten to the free throw line again by way of shooting a ton of threes. It's not always going to happen, but if there's going to be some more missed shots in this game, I fully expect Bullock to be by the rim, to be able to get a couple extra rebounds, maybe even go to the follow line there as well. So I like that as a play. All right, so let's go ahead and give our community pick. They have spoken, and thankfully, Peter, they are siding with us. The community has spoken. They are taking Dallas +6, so we can all be in agreement together. Everybody is kumbaya here at BetSided, and the community try to improve on a solid opening week here on the Daily Betslip. So the people have spoken. Mavericks +6 in game 1 tonight. Also encourage anybody that's hanging out with us to make sure that you check out Green on the Greens with Ian McMillan and Cody Williams. That's coming up at the top of the hour for anybody looking to dive in on PGA and golf betting over the course of this week. That's going to be a lot of fun. These guys have been having some outstanding picks over the course of the week. So really encourage you guys to check that out as well, and appreciate all of you guys hanging out with us here on the Daily Betslip. It'll be myself and Ian McMillan. We'll see how he does after night 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs tomorrow. Pete, great stuff. Make sure you guys check out his best bets and his best prop bets for the NBA today. We will talk to you again tomorrow, Daily Betslip, 5 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you guys stick around for Green on the Greens with Ian and Cody. Until then, so long, everybody. Be good.